I'm bored, so I'm just going to make a video about absolutely nothing because I'm bored and it's 2:30. Because I had a nap at 8 p.m. and I feel like I'm trapped in my flat at the moment. I can't go outside really to do things. I lost the USB-C to headphone jack connector. I'm waiting for a delivery of a new one, which means when I go outside, I can't be on my headphones. If not on my headphones, I have to listen to the absolute chaos of the outside, because it's bloody chaos all the time. There's always people screaming and running around and yelling, and I'm not having it. I don't want to put up with it. I don't want to have to hear the existence of other people going on. What's the point in going out and walking around if I can't listen to a nice podcast? When did I get so old? So I feel like I'm going a little bit stir crazy for the past 2 days whilst I wait for this delivery. I just want to do this, right, this video is just going to be me talking about absolutely nothing, waffling on for about 10 minutes and seeing what sticks, because didn't YouTube used to be that? People just uploading any old shit? I mean, one could argue that YouTube still is that way. So, this is kind of like a video in a podcast format if I was the only host on a podcast. I have a confession. That confession is I secretly really enjoy looking at Zoella's Insta stories because she finds beauty in the mundanity of life, and I think that's wonderful. She put up some picture of some cabbages, saying something along the lines of, look how pretty these cabbages are, and to emphasise that point, followed up with a video of panning this cabbage field, and I just thought that was really quite beautiful and touching, and it said something about the fragility of life and that there's beauty in absolutely everything. Wherever you look, there is beauty in nature. I'm not even really I'm taking the piss a tiny bit, but I do enjoy looking at her Insta stories because it is just normal and nice and rather sweet. She's always put up things like that, like, oh, just ate this whole pack of biscuits. I'm here for you. I'm here for you eating a whole pack of biscuits, rather than, slightly scamming your younger audience. I'd rather hear about you eating biscuits than making £50 calendars. I've decided, quick subject change, to use my time much more efficiently and get back into reading a lot of books. I've moved into a new place, so I've had to unpack all my books from that place and have them all here, and I've decided to reread a lot of the books that I read as a teenager from an adult, slightly tiny bit wiser perspective. So I like to read quite a large variety of books. I quite like reading chick lit type, like Sophie Kinsella books, because I can just get through them very quickly. Like a 400-page Sophie Kinsella book I could get through in about 4 or so hours. But I just reread The Woman Who Went to Bed for a Year by Sue Townsend, who she's done a kind of lot of almost politically based fiction, but I don't know how to describe it. Her books are incredibly British. There's this one book she did where the royal family get kicked out of Buckingham Palace, as they should, abolish the royal family, abolish the monarchy. They get kicked out of Buckingham Palace and they have to live on this street full of working class people. And there's just a lot of gritty British, they're funny books though. They're meant to be funny, they're meant to be satirical, but there is gritty British realness in them as well. But this book, The Woman Who Went to Bed for a Year, it's not as I remembered reading it the first time. The ending is I imagined a completely different ending in my head. I mean, spoiler alert, she doesn't get out of bed. She gets made to have a bath and then realises that the best attribute a human being can have is simple kindness, something along those lines. And there's a lot of loose ends. The way I remembered it was one day she just got up out of bed herself. So I think I just imagined a different ending, because it's definitely not how I remembered it. All the characters in the book were bloody awful. They're designed to be awful. They were written to be awful. My God, they were all bloody awful. Except for this one guy called Alex. There's this bloke called Alex in the book. He's all right. He's nice. The main woman, God, I think I've forgotten her name, the main character's name. I'm pretty sure I've just completely forgotten it. Doesn't matter anyway. I could sympathise with her she wanted to stay in bed for a year, like her husband's cheating and her twins have just left her crazy twins have just left to go off to college. She was trapped in a life that she didn't really want. Decided to just go in bed for a year and think about things. And I can empathise with the existential part of it. Looking back, reflecting over your life as you're in, the mid of your life. But then towards the end of it, you just kind of lose a little bit of patience with her because, mother-in-law dies and her own mother has some sort of lump, a walnut-sized lump under her breast. That's never resolved. And the mother starts to lose, she's trying to cater for her daughter who's refusing to get out of bed, and the mother is starting to lose her memories and her mind a little bit by the end. That's not resolved. The twins get kidnapped by MI5 or something. That's a bit weird. The dad, who was having an affair with someone called Titiana, then shags someone who must be about 18 or 19 who's pretending to, or maybe is pregnant. There was a lot of loose ends and it just ends very abruptly, and I felt very underwhelmed by the ending. Though it was an interesting premise. And then I read for the first time The Regulators by Stephen King. I'm a big Stephen King avid constant reader. I've read the majority of his works, I think. Most, if not all, of his short stories. The majority of his works. I haven't read Cujo, and I'd quite like to read that. He says in his memoirs on writing, his memoirs are called On Writing, that when he can't remember writing Cujo because he was just so blitzed on drugs and alcohol. Legend. I think he says something to the effect that it's a shame that he can't remember writing it because he's read it and he thinks it's quite a good book. Imagine being so fucked up. He had an intervention, he's been sober since the 80s. But imagine being so fucked up, you write in it. And he writes door stoppers. All of his books are like 500 plus pages. Imagine writing this much, not being able to remember like a damn thing. Such power. Even though we love his work, I don't find a lot of it frightening. I read a lot of him as a teenager, and I wasn't scared or frightened when I read it. I just found it more enthralling, if anything. Misery, I think, was more horrifying than it because misery could be happening to someone right now, and Annie Wilkes probably is keeping someone held hostage. Like, that happens. That's a fact of the matter. I think that was more disturbing. I think the scariest thing he's ever written is a short story called The Jaunt, and I believe it's only about 50 pages long. And it's in one of his, short story books. And that, because I get quite existentialist, The Jaunt to me is horrifying, panic attack inducing. And I think I would say, I'm not going to ruin it, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but go read it. And if you don't find it terrifying, you've not thought about it for long enough. So go read The Jaunt, let me know what you think. It's short and the PDF is online somewhere. Should I even say that? You should fucking find this PDF for everything anywhere. So anyway, I've decided I want to reread a lot of Stephen King. I never read The Regulators, which Stephen King had the pseudonym called Richard Bachman. I think it's because he was kind of he's been at the height of his career for the past 40 years, but he was at a height in his career where anything he writes was an automatic bestseller because he's so prolific. So I think he was having a little bit of an identity crisis about it, and I think he wanted to write a few books under the Richard Bachman pseudonym so he could see if he could emulate any of the successes of his big books away from his own name. I think it was like a bit of an experiment for him. I don't know how well it fared. I think he still did quite well. But The Regulators by Richard Bachman, Stephen King, is a mirror book to Desperation by, under the name Stephen King. And I read Desperation when I was a teenager, and it really, really stuck with me. It's a very Christian book, very heavy in its themes. I'm agnostic, I'm not atheist. They're a bit too edgy for me. I was never raised religiously. I have some interest in religion just from the story part of it and the metaphors within Christianity or Judaism. There's some esoteric branches of Judaism, I think it's within the Kabbalah, that I'm quite, like, is it Adam Kadmon? Vaguely what Neon Genesis Evangelion with the Tree of Life alludes to is like Kabbalistic Judaism. I'm probably not saying any of this correctly, but you know what I mean. So I can read a book where the themes are really heavy and biblical and it doesn't put me off or anything like that. I find it really, really interesting. And Desperation definitely has, it's about, I think it is about finding God again, but also accepting that God isn't rainbow and sunshines. It's whatever, like however you want to say, it's really, really, really cruel. There's some bits that they stuck with me quite a bit. Actually, I remember being drunk and having this chat. A lot of my stories, like, a lot of my stories start with, I remember being drunk and just getting really emotional about, well, I remember reading that at 18, having like a drunk chat with my mum of all people, just being like, oh God, it's so deep though. There's a bit where, Johnny Marinville, is that his name? A main character in the book. Spoiler alerts by the way, he says to this boy David, do you want to know how cruel your God is? How fantastically cruel. Sometimes he makes us live. And I remember reading that and being kind of blown away, like, that is a powerful line. Yeah, God and life is cruel. Sometimes we live on. Being 18 and being, oh, this is so deep. But it still stuck with me X amount of years later. So Desperation and The Regulators are mirrored stories in that they run parallel to each other. They're both in like parallel universes. And so there's a lot of recurring characters, but in completely different situations. And I read through when I sit down with fiction, it just takes me a few days to get through something. I enjoyed The Regulators, and in the beginning, it was very imaginative. Basically, a evil spirit or some sort of entity called Tak has managed to lodge his way into the mind of an autistic boy called Seth. He's using like a parasite, I guess, like an interdimensional parasite. He's using Seth as this host and is laying siege to this small street called Poplar, and sort of using Seth's imagination to have these characters from this TV show just murder people on this street. It's really, really imaginative. And then towards the end, it kind of fizzled out a little bit, and there was a epilogue where it was one of those epilogues where I had to look up on Reddit to see what other people thought about it, which, I mean, a story is kind of stuck with you if you find yourself Googling other people's interpretations after the fact, after you've read it, I suppose, but it kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a little bit meh. But that seems to be what other fans of Stephen King thought of that book. Because as it is a mirror book to Desperation was really good. Yeah, it was really heavy on the biblical themes. I appreciate that not everyone would like that. But it was bloody, it was savage. It was savage. The Regulators was still savage, but maybe it was just I read Desperation in a different time of my life where it was just simply more impactful. Maybe I was just less, I've always been cynical and jaded. Maybe I was less worldly and experienced back then. I don't know. Well, I've got a lot of time for Stephen King, and whenever I read him, he kind of rekindles my want to be a writer, and I've not done any writing for the past 4 or so months. I mean, I've had the time to, but extenuating circumstances, it's been a bit of a, lockdown was a bit of a weird place mentally for a lot of people. But I want to do it, and I want to stick to the Stephen King schedule is he wakes up and every day he writes 2,000 words. He has the time to, it's his full-time gig, but I have the time to do that as well. I spend, a few hours of my day doing fuck all, like objectively fuck all. So I could write 2,000 words a day, but I just need to get over all the self-doubt, I suppose. Anyway, this video quickly turned into just books I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading a Slavoj Žižek book called How to Read Lacan. I can't really say much about it yet, other than I really like reading Slavoj Žižek, even though he's a lot to take in. I enjoy that. I just really like big, larger than life characters, I suppose. I've been listening to, on Audible, there is a set of courses, classical mythology, Professor Elizabeth Vandiver, Whitman College. So it's a series of lectures, I think it's about 15 hours long or thereabouts, and it's on Greek mythology. Brilliant. If you use Audible, if you're okay with using Audible, I would 100% recommend, if you have any interest in Greek culture or mythology, downloading, buying that lecture series. The lecturer, incredibly smart, obviously. You'd hope a lecturer would be smart. There was something she pointed out towards the beginning of the course, though, where she was talking about Carl Jung's theory of, what is it, the man with 1,000 faces, wherein, there's certain archetypes to, like, every mythos, and Freud used, or, was inspired by a lot of Carl Jung. But Freud and Jung, their theories, she pointed out that their theories are based from the get-go on assertions that, so let's take Jung for example. Let's use Little Red Riding Hood, right? I'm not saying that this is what Jung thinks, but I'm just using, this is the type of thing that Jung would say about, like, the archetypes of Little Red Riding Hood. Young girl maybe represents innocence, goes into a forest. The forest, that could represent the unconscious mind. You're going into the deep unknown. But me saying that and, like, this and accepting this and that is an assertion, because there's no way of really knowing if that's true or not. Does the forest represent this? It's just an interpretation. But the way that Freud and Jung go about it is, no, this is how it is. And then they base a lot of their teachings around that. She mentioned something like that, and that was interesting because I've read a bit of Jung and kind of took the whole archetypal thing for face value as well. I think she might have even mentioned David Campbell at some point. Anyway, fantastic if you want to learn more about Greek mythology. I really enjoyed how absolutely savage the gods in Greek mythology don't give a fuck about humans. What was one story that I thought was particularly awful? Tantalus, a man who tried to trick the gods into eating a human. I think he kills his own son and tries to feed him to the gods, just seemingly for the hell of it, to try to trick the gods. And what's the mother of Persephone called? She accidentally eats a bit of the son. The gods are furious when they find out, because eating the flesh of a man would kind of be taboo or whatever. It's a violation to serve up the gods secretly, a bit of human. So they punish him by having him stand in, I don't know if it's the river Styx, but he's eternally hungry and eternally thirsty, and just above him, out of reach, are some, fruits on the tree, and he's standing in a river. But whenever he goes down to take a drink of the river shrivels up and dries up into nothingness. And whenever he goes to take some fruit from the tree kind of, yanks it out of the way. So he's eternally hungry, eternally thirsty, constantly tantalized by something he can never have. And Tantalus is where the word tantalize actually comes from, that mythos. I found that really brutal. But then what are you doing, just like feeding the gods a bit of humans? What's that about? That is not a pro gamer move. Anyway, so I'd recommend that, and I'm doing a reread right now of Battle Royale. I started yesterday, the Japanese novel. I'm about halfway through. I loved that film as a teenager. I read the book, I enjoyed it very much. I thought it would be interesting to read this from an adult perspective, because obviously as a teenager reading it, Battle Royale is like the original Hunger Games. Apparently the author of the Hunger Games, can't remember her name, sorry, she said that she'd never even heard of Battle Royale, but she came up with her idea, which it could happen, I suppose, it could happen. Even though Battle Royale was such a massive hit, it could still happen. But Battle Royale is way more brutal than Hunger Games, I think. It's a class of 40 students who have been in classes together, so they all know each other. It's not people from different districts. It's a class of students who are put on this island, forced to kill each other. So they've all known each other for years, and I think it's called like the Greater Republic of Japan or something to that effect, where the government is completely authoritarian, and any dissidence towards them results in you just getting killed and made an example of. Japan in the novel has become completely isolationist, so they don't seem Or is it the Greater Republic of Asia? No, because I think they do trade still with China. Maybe China is part of... I don't know like the the geographical background yet of Battle Royale. I can't remember. But I remember reading it as a teenager, and I thought it was brilliant, but also I was suitably horrified at the thought of, well, I'm a teenager, this could happen to me. Reading it back from an adult perspective now, it's all the more horrifying to think of children having to be pitted against each other and kill each other, because to me at my age, a 17-year-old and 18-year-old is still kind of like like teenagers are still, obviously they're not children, but there's like childlike elements, and there's still a sense of innocence and naivety to teenagers. I would know, I was a teenager, so now as an adult looking back, thinking of poor 17-year-old me, if I had to do that, could I do that? I wouldn't go down without a fight, but if I was with my best mate, horrifying, bloody good though. I'm halfway through that. I recommend it. I already know what happens, but I would recommend it. The book, obviously, it's about 400 or so pages long, so it goes in much deeper into all the little characters, not just the kind of main characters of Shuya and Noriko. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know what happened with this video. It just turned into me rambling about books and stuff. But if you enjoy this kind of thing, then let me know, because I'm more than happy to talk about fiction and the different types of fiction that I enjoy reading, because it is quite an eclectic mix. Yeah, that's all for this video. If you read anything of what I recommend, I recommend Battle Royale and The Jaunt. I recommend Desperation. I recommend the majority of Stephen King's works, to be quite honest. Kind of want to do like some in-depth book reviews. The way that I review YouTuber films or YouTuber OnlyFans or whatever. I want to do some book reviews. My camera's about to die. I want to do a book review of Twilight, just if it's as bad as I remember. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like or subscribe. I make new videos whenever I feel like it. My battery is about to die. See you guys next time. Follow me on Instagram. Bye!